Hello, today I'm going to show you how to implement the publish subscribe pattern in the cloud using Azure Queue storage. In order to do this, you first need to create a storage account. And if you don't know how to create a storage account in the cloud, we already have a video called Create Storage Account using Azure Cloud Shell. So you can search for this video and watch how to create a storage account. So once you have created a storage account, you can get the connection string for the storage accounts. And the connection string is what we are going to be using in order to actually have an access to the storage accounts and to be able to create a queue in the storage accounts. All right. So once you have the connection string and you've created your storage account, now let's look at how we work with a queue that the storage account we hold. To access a queue, you need three pieces of information. And the first one, of course, is the one I already mentioned, which is the storage account name. And the second one is going to be the authorization token. And the third one is going to be the queue name that you actually want to create. All right. This information is something that is used by both applications that talk to the queue, such as the web front end that had messages, and the mid-tier that processes the messages. Okay, so here we can see that I already have my connection string, which is coming from my storage accounts, and the authorization token, which we can see as part of the connection string. And the third one we mentioned, which is very important where you are accessing a queue, is the queue name. So here is going to be my queue name. And in order to be able to actually create the queue, we need the connection string to the storage accounts. So here we can see we have a queue client, which is going to create the queue for us using the connection string that we passed in. Now that we already have the objects, so here we can use it to actually create the queue. Okay, and this function is checking if we already have the queue created, and if we don't have the queue created, this is the only time this function is going to create a queue. And here we can see that we have a while loop exit program, which of course we set to false here by default, and this is going to continue executing until this actually change back to true. And we're going to see how we switch that back to true. So here we can see that we are collecting the user data. We are asking for the user to choose an operation. And whatever the operation the user chooses, then we are going to decide on what function that we actually want to call. So right here we can see where we are making the decision. So if the user gives 1, then what we're going to do is to actually send a message to the queue. And if the user gives 2, then we're gonna pick message async. So basically we're gonna look at the message that we have in the queue. And that is not going to dequeue the message, it only pick at the message. And the point number 3 is when the user gives 3, then what we do is that we receive a message async. Basically, this is going to be the consumer of the message, receiving the message. And the last option is to basically terminate the program from running. And that is when we set the exit program to true. And based on that, we're going to jump out of the loop and we never execute that loop again. And here we can see also we have the else condition. So that will be when a user supply any key that is not part of the keys that we are checking over there. And we're going to tell the user that that is an invalid choice. Okay, aside from that, so when the user select 1 and we gonna hit the send message, then we jump to this function. Okay, so here we can see that we pass in the queue client into this function, which of course is going to allow us to be able to execute, the message that we actually want to send. And as a matter of fact, we can also see here that we have the full name and also the course, which of course these are the details that we want to receive from the users. So we have what we call the student data, which is a class that has an access to two properties. So here we can see the first one, and this is the second one. So basically, for every student, we should have the full name of the student and the course that the student want to take at Massivite, for instance. So now, if we go up a little bit more, here we can see how we are using the student data class, and we have the new student data here, and here we can see where we set up the full name and the course for the students. And after that, we have the string message. And right now we can see that we serialize the student data because we are having the student data as a type of student data object. And we needed to serialize that in order to be able to send the message as a JSON format. And then we use the queue clients, then we send message async, and we pass the message that has been serialized into JSON format, and that message is now sent into the queue. And after that, we have what we call the response dot value. So basically, we are taking the response value, and here we can see that we print out the send receipt, telling the user that the message has been sent and showing the ID of the message that we just sent, and also the expiration time for that message. Okay, and after that, if a user decided to look at the message that was sent, so the user can select to, and then this message, this function will be picked. And here we will see that we also use the queue clients, but in this case we are calling the pick message async, which is the function that is going to be executed in order to pick a message by looking at the message without dequeuing that message. So here we can see we can have an access to the message ID and the inserted on, which is the date and time when that message was actually inserted. And here we can see we are only picking at the message, so another consumer could dequeue this message, which basically means that the pick function will never dequeue the message. And that's the job of the receive message. So the receive message, async, is the consumer of the message that was sent. So this is the function that is going to process that message the way it needs to be processed. And again, we can see that we pass in the queue clients. And right here, we can see that we are using the queue clients dot receive message async, which of course is going to be the one to process the message by receiving the message and then get back the response of the message received. And here we can see that we have an access to the values, so which means that we can be able to point to the message ID and also the inserted on, which is the date and time when that message was inserted. And here we can see that we have an access to the raw body of the message by calling the body on the message that we have over here. And one thing that is also here is the fact that we are doing a conversion from the message body to object. And what do we mean by that? So here we can see that we have the student data, and here we can see the student. So what we are receiving here is basically a JSON that we need to convert to the object, because that is what we refer to as the raw right there. So here we can see message.body, which is the same that we have here. Then we call the function to object from JSON. So as you can see, that should make sense to you according to the name of this particular object that you can see there. Then we pass in the student data, which is the objects that we want to actually convert into the student data. And then that will give us access to the properties of the student data, like the full name and the course. And this is what we can see right here. So we have the student data dot full name and student data dot course. And after that, we now have the function, which is going to actually delete the message from the queue. And here we can see we delete the message by ID and by the POPs receipt. Another thing that is very important that you need to remember is the fact that we have the delete message separate from the get message. So when we actually do this, receive message, what we are doing is that we are getting the message from the queue. And if you understand what the queue actually means, it means that whenever you get a message from the queue, you also dequeue the queue. But this is not the case here. And the reason is because we want to be safe, right? Okay, so let's say as a receiver, you receive a message from the queue and that was not processed to completion. So that means the message is going to get lost. So in order to avoid this kind of situation, the message is going to be processed at least once. Okay, so which means that we will try as much as possible to make sure that that message is actually being processed. Okay, so this is what it is called at least once approach, and it allow the message not to get lost even when the receiver is not available along the line. Okay, so let's say the receiver took the message and along the line the receiver shut down, so the message will still return in the queue, and because the receiver hasn't dequeued the message, so the only time the receiver can dequeue the message is after the completion of processing that message. And this is what we can see here. So we receive, so if we are able to receive, and if this get executed successfully up to the delete function, that is the only time the message will be dequeued. And this is very, very important for queue, so which of course is not going to allow your message to get lost. So once we have that, then we have the queue operation, so which is to send message, to pick message, and to receive message. So these are the three operations that this function is actually performing, right? So we receive message, we send message, and we pick message. Okay, so that's the queue operations. So now that we can see that this program is well explained and everything is already being put in place, not to waste your time. So what I'm going to do now is to basically execute this program, and we can see what is going to come up, and we can make our choices in order to send a message, pick on the message, and also to receive a message. So let's wait and see what comes up. Great. So we can see now that the program is ready to accept message that we want to send to the queue. And here it's asking for what operation would you like to perform. And the first one, of course, that I would like to perform is to send a message. So I'm going to select one. And now it's asking for my full name, which of course I'm going to write my name right here. And hit enter on the keyboard. So the next thing that it asks for is the course that I would like to take at Massivite, and I will do .NET and hit enter on the keyboard. And then I should receive a message that the message has been sent. So which is a message notifying me that this message has been sent to queue, and it also has the expiration date and time, which we can see right now on the screen. And what this basically means that is going to expire in 7 days this time. So if you don't set an expiration date of a message that you send to the queue, it defaults to 7 days. So if you want, you can set the expiration date from 1 to 7. And here we can see that we also have the operation still running. And what I would like to do now is to pick at the next message, and I will hit 2 on the keyboard, and here we can see that it's giving me the message ID and the inserted on, which is the date and time when I inserted this message into the queue. And here we can also see that this message is not the queue by the pick function, because that's the job of the receiver, and the receiver is the consumer of the message, and the receiver is the person that is going to process the message the way he actually wants to process the message. Okay, so now we need to actually hit 3 in order to see how or to receive this message. So here we can see that we have the message ID, the inserted on, and we have the message raw body, so which includes the full name as my name and the course that I actually want to take. And if you remember, we actually did conversion into objects, so from JSON to objects, and the object we converted to is the student data. And that's what you can see right here, that we have the student data and we are able to pick the student full name and the course. So which is a bit different from the JSON that we initially have here. And that's the process. And here we can see that the message is actually then deleted. Okay, so this is how to actually, send message to the queue and pick at the message and also to consume that message. And the next thing I will basically do is to exit out of the program. And I'm going to make a wrong selection first. And you can see that it's telling me that it's an invalid choice. And then we make the right selection. And you can see that we are totally exit out of that program. And this is how to basically implement a queue to be able to send message to the queue and also to be able to receive message from the queue.